First up today, we have Teresa Buckwalter and Christy Carter for Traffic Planning Design Incorporated and Mr. Poston. Planning Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Good afternoon. Uh, Teresa and Christy are here today to update us on a project on a grant that the county received. I was here about a year ago to ask gain your consent to apply for the feasibility studies for sidewalks and paved trails to NCDOT. And it was a no-match grant, which means we didn't have to pay anything for it. And we were awarded the study on Fairview Road, the idea being connecting Fairview School into the sidewalk network or into the pedestrian network to allow mobility back between not only the school, but also back to the playing fields back behind, so folks that don't have a car or need to alternative transportation can safely make their way back to and access both places. So today, Teresa and Christy are here to give you an update of where we are in the process. We've been working with the school system on a couple of ideas, and they wanted to show you a couple of different alternative designs, allow you to ask some questions. This is not a final plan. This is more of a check-in and see what questions you have and if any alterations need to be made as we move ourselves through the process. I'll also note that as a part of this, we will be meeting with the school board to discuss the different design opportunities, and I think we'll be doing that later this month. So without any further ado from me, I'll introduce Christy and Teresa. Thank you.
So I'm Christy Carter, and I'm not going to stand up here for too long. Teresa's going to do most of this presentation. And as Mike said, this is an update. It's a little unusual for us to come to leadership in this point of the. All right, hold on one second. I want to make sure I know. Is there a way to advance it without going? Got it. Okay, thanks. It's a little unusual for us to come in this part of the process, but given that this is near the schools, we recognize there's some sensitivity around that. So we're coming to you today, the school board, on the 23rd. And what we'll cover today, you've already met Teresa and I. We're going to cover the study purpose and the study area, and then we're going to talk about those alignments that we've come up with, and then the next steps, and just get any responses and questions that you have for us. And throughout, you'll see pictures from our site visit and how we came up with this. Just to introduce you to the team that's working on it, Teresa and I are the two leads. Christy Stout is the lead engineer. And then we have our coworkers, Rachel Bronson and Kenny Armstrong, working on the data and the graphics for this project, but you won't see them. And as Mike mentioned, the county applied for this grant from IMD, and IMD being the Integrated Mobility Division of NCDOT. This was a new program for them. And what they realized that there was a gap. We worked on Jackson County's pedestrian plan as well. And there was what IMD realized is that communities would do their planning documents, and then they didn't have a source of funding to take something from planning to feasibility. So this has been a pilot project across the state so that you can walk away with the next steps in a plan for a specific project. Specifically for Fairview Road, as Mike mentioned, the goal is to get access to those schools from 107. We don't hit it a whole lot, but as you will know, there is a lot being done on 107, and so this ties into the improvements that'll happen there. And then that first picture that I had, I'll flip back to that. If you've been there during school time, you know the queuing that happens around Fairview and Smoky Mountain. So with that, I will turn it over to Teresa, and she'll go through some more of the details.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike and Christy. All right, so what you have in front of you is our study area map. And I'm going to scroll real quick to that very introductory slide. As Christy mentioned, we came out during when the school was being let out. So the high school was being let out and the elementary school was being let out. So during our walk. And so we were able to kind of look at what are some opportunities and some constraints in this area. And this first slide really says, tells a good story, is that, you can see the cemetery. We know that that's a constraint for a sidewalk on Fairview. And then we also can see Bumgarner Branch right here in the foreground. And we know that, in some places that stream is a little the stream bank is eroding a bit in places. And so, of course, the stream itself kind of is a constraint, right? But it could also, experience some enhancements as well. And then also on the left of the image, you see the school fields. So one thing that we couldn't really, this is the reason we come into the fields, we couldn't really see just how much space there was until we kind of got on the boots on the ground. And we were excited about that. And Jake Buchanan walked this with us so that we could all kind of get a sense of things together, and he could help us with what are the really key things here. And as Christy said, we'll go to the school board folks in a couple weeks. So I just wanted to show you that picture when we're looking at our map. Actually, this one's a pretty good one because this shows both the map and the 107 project that Christy mentioned that does have an impact on our study area, and that is to the west of our study area. And so if you look at the map on the right, this is just our gray box, but you can see the high school, you can see the elementary. And so we're really focused in on this red dotted area that does include 107, but it also includes the campuses, really to get from 107 to the elementary school. And then our study is looking at both the alignments that we're recommending or suggesting and looking at those alignments, but also the facility type. And so we'll be talking about some sidewalks, but also some paved trails that are more like 10-foot wide paved trails, like a greenway. And so we were looking at multiple alignments. You can see kind of at the very bottom, these are what we're calling the southern alignments, the ones along Fairview Road. And we understand that there was at one point, there was an express design that showed a sidewalk on Fairview Road on the school side, and there was a cost associated with that. And so we kind of took that data into consideration. But like I said, we also walked and noted that there was more space than you may think. And so looking at a potential alignment that goes between Bumgarner Branch Creek and the fields. And we'll be talking with the school about their needs for that. But there's certainly ample space there, so long as that we can make sure that there's no flying balls or anything. And then, so that's alignments A and B in the southern part. And then they would continue with a wider sidewalk on Big Orange Way so that sidewalk could accommodate multiple people walking side by side. So to get up to Fairview. And then on this map, and you'll see on next maps, the purple lines are the existing sidewalks out there. And so there is some existing sidewalks on Fairview. There's some existing sidewalks on Cliffside Drive, but they have some significant gaps in them. And so the northern alignments that we're showing, A and B, really help to fill those gaps in the sidewalk network. And so really this could be a project that you could choose to advance both options of a northern alignment with sidewalks and a southern alignment with more like a greenway trail. And then, as Mike mentioned, there is also a spur trail in the southern alignments that would lead to the fields, sort of on the lower part along Fairview. And so these are kind of our overall study area, along with the alignments that we looked at. And I'm going to show you those in a little bit more depth and with some initial cost estimates. So we looked at, of course, these two. We're looking now just at the northern alignments. And so we looked at coming off of 107 off Jones, and then it turns into Cliffside. We looked at both sides of that road and looking at alignment A probably being the most feasible, that stays on the north side of that road and then crosses over after Smoky Mountain Drive. And this is because we were also there during the let out of the high school, and we know that that's for cars turning left at that intersection of Cliffside Drive and Smoky Mountain Drive was pretty intense. And so we wouldn't want to have a crosswalk there. We'd want to make sure that it happened on the other side of that driveway. And so when we talk about high visibility crossing, we wanted to show an image of that. And so this is something that cars are, all of us are more distracted these days. And so this is really make sure that drivers really can stop and see the pedestrians and the crosswalk with signage, with advanced warning signals and signage actually in the crosswalks. And so there's kind of an image that shows that. And we've identified, this one has been a fun project for us to really delve into the actual design of this. And so we really took those alignments that I shared with you and put them into our CAD drawing so that we could actually really kind of lay this out to show you what we're talking about here. So these sort of darker lines are our sidewalks, recommended sidewalk areas and crosswalks. And then connecting, you can see now on the aerial that the existing sidewalks are, the concrete color. But we also noted in the field that there is here's the detention pond. There could be an opportunity, and the slopes weren't too steep, to have a trail that went on the other side of that pond that then connected to new sidewalk down on 107. And so there's some opportunity to connect right into the high school as well. But our sort of goal was to get up to Fairview Elementary. And so then we're kind of climbing with sidewalks that fill those gaps along Jones Street and Cliffside Drive and kind of all the way up, and then noted those locations again where high visibility crossings would be really important for the overall pedestrian safety network. And then kind of coming up to this intersection, which is a little bit challenging on Big Orange Way. But it's not so challenging that we couldn't, we noted that we could tighten up the curve radius and put in sidewalks that then connect to the Fairview Elementary sidewalk and entryway into the elementary school. And so noting that all the locations that we need for crosswalks, and then when you hit Big Orange Way, as I mentioned, kind of our recommendation there would be a wider sidewalk, and we'll show you an image of that in a moment. And so then since we had put these alignments into our CAD drawing, we were then able to do some takeoffs and developing these conceptual cost estimates. And like Mike said, we're not done with the plan, and so we're going to refine these somewhat. And as of right now, we didn't include the design and permitting costs and utilities in this conceptual cost estimate, but we developed that for alignment A, where you take the sidewalks and take them all the way up to Fairview Elementary. And then moving south into these southern alignments that I touched on earlier, we looked at cost estimates for those too, and we also put those into our CAD drawing as well. And so really kind of showed, like, we're looking at topography, we're looking at width, we're looking at materials. And so we are showing the high school, you can see the ball fields going in between the Baumgartner branch and the fields. And then this area is a practice field that they do use. So we didn't want to kind of go right straight through it, but we stay again along the edge of that field so that still can be used. And then we parallel Baumgartner branch until we kind of get, this is a little bit of a slope area to come up to this smaller parking lot. But we can kind of use what's existing there in terms of there's a driveway for maintenance access, and we can convert that. And then we can add curb in this location so that we can then cross Big Orange Way and then come up Big Orange Way, like I mentioned. And we kind of looked at this southern alignment as well as we didn't want to ignore the sidewalks along Fairview, but that would be much more expensive and much more challenging to get sidewalks in part because Baumgartner branch is so close to the roadway. And then on the other side of the roadway is, of course, the cemetery. But so between the road and Baumgartner branch would require some retaining walls for if you wanted to put a sidewalk. The benefit of this is that it can be 10 feet wide. And so you could have cyclists as well as folks walking, coming off of the sidewalk on 107 and walking through campus to get to either the high school or the elementary. And we know that people, in some ways, kids like to bike more than walk. So we also wanted to, part of our scope is to do these renderings that show, what could this look like? So you've got the before on the left and the after on the right. And we wanted to show that this is a viable option coming through here. There could be a fence if the school wanted to see that. Although I think it's a little bit, more open for students to be able to use it if there's not a fence. We just show enhancements to Baumgartner branch and the bandstand. It was noted to us that we could probably show that that's removed. So that keeps this alignment right along the creek there. And so we do know that there's some water utilities we have to be aware of and avoid. But here's an image that we thought would be helpful to express kind of what this could look like and be. And then when I was talking about Big Orange Way, as you noted, we were there during pickup, so we've got the long queuing line. But we were happy to see that there's some opportunity for a sidewalk with a short wall. We know there's a significant topography that drops off, but if there was a 2-foot wall, retaining wall and a fence, then we could get an 8-foot sidewalk, close to an 8-foot sidewalk in there, so that goes all the way up Big Orange Way to the elementary school. And then so we looked at the cost estimates. We looked at kind of a higher level cost estimate for Fairview Road because we were using the data that was already existing, and we had our folks look at that as well. So that sidewalk along Fairview Road that would require retaining walls would be more like a $2 million project, whereas the Greenway Trail inside their campus is significantly less at $500,000 project. And so that kind of brings us to the next steps. Like we mentioned, we're going to present the same information to the school board and answer any questions they may have, and then to advance a preferred alternative in conversation and with our steering committee, and then refine our concepts. And then we are looking at an April date to develop a report for you all. But this is a feasibility study, and we used it to determine and solicit. You all can use it to solicit funding from a variety of sources, such as DOT. There are state grants for greenways especially, as well, and greenways income tied in with a stream restoration project. There's also funding for that as well at the state level. But there, of course, is going to be more opportunities for leadership input and community input. But we would love to answer any questions you all have as you've looked through what was in the packet and what we've heard today.
For option A on the southern end, at 500,000, does that give you going up Big Orange Way, that retaining wall and sidewalk? Is that included in that, or is that in the B option?
Oh, that is a good question because of our map there. No, it includes the greenway along the southern end near Baumgartner Branch, as well as widening that sidewalk on Big Orange Way. And B was just the sidewalk on Fairview.
Now on the greenway plan on the southern end, down near the what they call that? I guess it's the batting cages down near the 4-lane. How is the public going to access that? Because they've got a gate up right now. Are they going to take the gate down? Are they going to make like an opening there?
So off of 107?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's super light, I think, on here, but we did overlay the 107 plans, which do widen it there. Mm-hmm. And we're proposing entering at a driveway. Yeah, you're right. There's that gate there.
So the public will have access. I know right now they've got a gate.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's locked.
Yep. We're proposing to show that would be the public access. And so we did actually price out also a fence that goes in between their practice fields and this, in case they want that number. But we were going to show it without it at first, because that way the students can access this to get around campus as well as the public. But yeah, our intent was to show that it's public access, and that to get local and state grants, specifically state grants for constructing, it would have to be public access.
Right.
Yeah. And Commissioner Bryson, I think that's why it's so important to include the schools in these conversations and their comfort level and how this would all work out and what they would like to see. And I think that's why we've walked it with their personnel. That's why we're going to the board to kind of understand what concerns may be, because I think school safety is also very important. I think I would note that we were asked at one point, well, could we just not go straight across behind the baseball field and kind of behind the field house? But we understand that there's actually classes that happen in the field house now, so you wouldn't want any access to be that close to where we know students will be on an ongoing basis. And so I think those are still some discussions we have to have.
I like the design. It's a great location.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. Make a big difference.
Pictures before, there's now a snappy loop.
Yeah.
That's built.
Oh.
That shows how the new sidewalk system's going to be.
Yep.
Yes.
That's already.
That's in place. I think they saw that there.
Okay.
And I think Teresa, if you go back to the one the map that has the option A,
Okay.
the northern loop.
Oh, the northern.
So Robert,
Okay.
that one you were just on,
Mhm.
that shows that this area right here. I think one of the reasons why they looked at that is when we were out there, you could see that was already a worn path. And sometimes when you look at sidewalks, and Christy and Teresa will tell you this, if you can see where people are already walking, that's probably a good place to try to incorporate, because that's where students are naturally using. So that's part of that reasoning as well.
Yeah. Along those lines, a couple of things we learned just about how the students use the campus. That a lot of kids want to cross 107 to go to Ingalls, and also if they
Get in trouble.
get in trouble, they're not allowed to park on campus. Ingalls is the de facto parking lot, so there are a lot of kids already crossing 107. So at the very least, making sure that that's a safe option for kids.
And the report will include a bunch of opportunities, strengths, images from our site visit and other data.
Yeah, I just want the public to be able to access it, but at the same time be safe for the students at
So
school.
grant money covering the cost of the company doing this survey.
Yes.
The study.
This was the grant that we applied for last year, and we were granted. The state pays for it all, and the state hires the consultant to come work in the community. So all this work today is because we got a grant to cover it. So the county that hasn't put any money into the feasibility study,
It doesn't cover construction.
but does not cover construction. So that we got to get another grant for that. But that's what we're preparing.
So you think we can get grants to take care of the whole project, or you think it's going to be a matching grant?
So I think what we're trying to do, and when we talk about our sidewalk network and our greenway system, and even the existing greenway, I think what you try to do is get a project pipeline, because sometimes grants come open from DOT or from the federal money's come available, and they say, hey, do you have a shovel-ready project? Well, our hope is to get a couple projects that are as close to shovel-ready as we can. Then when those monies come up, we aren't scrambling around saying, hey, do we have anything that fits this? And so by developing this project pipeline with some of these projects in mind, especially when we can partner with the state to cover the cost, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to have some things ready for when monies do come up. Certainly that doesn't preclude us from looking at any other budgetary options, but I think we really are setting this up for future grant opportunities and partnerships that we can find that will help fund this in total.
Usually at just a little over $1 million, it would be a huge.
Yeah, there are some costs involved, and of course, developing sidewalks and pathways in mountainous communities is a little bit more involved than some of our neighbors to the east. But I think if we don't take these opportunities when they're afforded us, I think we lose out on the ability to understand how to make these things a reality.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions?
Thank you for your time.
Thank y'all.
Moving on now to Ms. Alm and zero tolerance drug and alcohol testing policy and a few other little items. Ms. Alm.
Good afternoon.
Hey.
So we came to the Board of Commissioners last year in September to adopt the latest zero tolerance drug and alcohol testing policy. So we are back again. They have made some changes, and the North Carolina Department of Transportation and Mobility Division has provided the latest drug and alcohol policy template, and they, which is recommended by the Federal Transit Administration, FTA, and NCDOT IMD. So I provided the red line version of the testing policy so that all new changes could be identified, and I'll be asking for that the next January 16th Board of Commissioners meeting, I'll be asking for the request to adopt the latest version of that policy. Just to give you guys an idea of some of the changes, There were some definition updates and also the addition of an oral fluid specimen, which is basically a swab. And so they are working on making that as an option for future drug testing instead of urine. So basically, that is a lot of what the update is to have those definitions and that um, new statement of oral fluid.
Will that be the standard? Because it seems like it would be a lot more.
Well, at this point, the testing agency that we're currently using doesn't have the new oral fluid specimen option. However, I think they're just preparing us for future. So I think it'll be continued with the regular drug standards and then later have that option. I think it's just a preparation for that terminology. Do you have any questions?
That's great.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Is there consensus to have this on the next meeting?
Oh,
Moving on now to our 24-25 proposed budget calendar. And Ms. Fox.
Okay, the proposed budget calendar, today's the first date to discuss the calendar and looking at a retreat on February 20th at the Burl Building, same place we had it last year. And that is on the same date as the scheduled meeting for that night. The February 27th would be when the managers meets with the departments and offices. March 1st, the nonprofit grant applications are disseminated. On March 12th, that's a regular scheduled work session. That's if we need more time for any budget items, we can do it then, or we can schedule a different meeting date. March 22nd, we ask that all the requests be submitted to finance. April 1st, the nonprofit grant applications are due. April the 9th, we'll, at the regular work session, go over a summary of all the new requests for the year. April 17th through the 26th, the manager and finance meet with the departments and agencies to discuss their budget requests. April the 29th through the 6th, the manager and finance work together and have meetings, decide what we want to do, the recommendations be finalized, and we have a work session on May 14th, regular meeting, and would give an update on the new request. May the 21st is the regular meeting, and you would receive the manager's recommended budget. On May the 23rd, it'd be a special call work session to hear presentations if needed from safety, education, nonprofits, and other departments. June 4th, at the regular meeting, we would hold a budget public hearing. And the June 6th through 7th would be special budget meetings for the board to meet with agencies. And then June 18th, at a regular meeting, have the adoption of the budget.
Ms. Fox, this is kind of off, but for nonprofit grant applicants,
Mhm.
is there a place where they get that application? Is it on the finance website?
We can put it on the website.
Okay. I've had a couple nonprofits ask me how they are able to submit applications.
Okay. Yes, we can post it.
Okay.
And we'll go ahead and notify all the ones that normally turn them in.
Good to me. It's gonna be a busy year.
Busy year.
I'm interested to see how manager and finance manager are gonna meet together this year. It's gonna be it's either gonna be a short meeting or a long meeting.
Right,
Might have to have a Zoom meeting with yourself.
Yeah,
maybe.
that's great. I think there's consensus to move forward. I think February 20th is a great day.
Okay, good deal. We'll go ahead and move it to the agenda for next week.
Carrying on now to project updates.
I just want to go over some of the projects that we have prior to the budget and let you know exactly where we stand on each project. The Aquatic Center, the budget was $24,931,308, and the project is currently on schedule. Clark Nixon's projecting the May completion date. And at this time, we have earned $1,005,676 in interest. All the benchmarks have been met for arbitrage, and the final benchmark will be in June, and there won't be a problem meeting that. So the earnings that we have made can be applied to the project or the debt on this project. Okay. And I wanted to give you a copy of the rice field report we've got. We've had one meeting since this date, but this is the final field report we've got on the pool. And it's just given the work in progress and the observations on the project and showing all the items and where they are. And on the project ordinance, you can see the $24,931,308 budget. The total to date expenses are $16,055,791. And you can see where the investment earnings, and we will probably receive a couple $100,000 more on that before the project is over.
Cost down a little bit.
Yeah, it will. And also, the Public Works Director and Recreation Director is working together on some of the minor projects that we had in the budget to get the old part of the facility updated so we can have the grand opening at the same time. The Cashier's Glenville Recreation Project amount was $1,111,691. Equinox is preparing the drawings and specifications. They're waiting on some utility sheets to close, which would close the completions and modifications for the layout. And we should be able to go to bid sometime early this spring on that project. And the only expenses we've had on it to date is architect, and that's $69,615.88. The Webster Park project amounts $105,000. The picnic shelter, protective netting, and ADA parking lot and sidewalks have been completed. The pet waste stations have been installed. They're working on electric power and lights in the shelter now, and the trail screenings and picnic tables will be installed in early spring. And we've spent $66,852.08 of that at this point. The Whittier Qualla Park budget amounts $2,013,525. The well on the site was tested in December. It's a hand dug well, and it will need to be replaced. Now they're currently looking at some utility work and checking to see if they can connect to the line that goes through to the Whittier plant. But they will prepare the septic layouts. We're working with the Carolina Parks and Play for getting the manufactured playground equipment. And they're expecting early spring date for bids on it. The Dillsboro Complex project amount was $5,671,023, and it's nearing final completion. We've spent $5,587,556 to date. We are holding a retainage payment of $5,000 to the contractor. We're waiting to receive the final permit from the state before that retainage is paid. We're dealing with some soundproofing issues. We've put the soundproof panels inside the office. We're looking at doing some outside where the sound carries across the river. The office unit for the Green Energy Park has been delivered and set up. The Public Works Department's going to do the underpinning, the electrical and ramps and decks for that facility. That should be done within the next few weeks. The funding for the office unit is from the general fund budget, it's not included in part of the project balance. The Center for Domestic Peace project, the amount's $4,678,279, and the bids will be received on it February 15th at 3 o'clock. We've currently spent $274,230 on that project. We did get the survey on the small piece of property we were looking at. So that is progressing. Some of the other projects that we have outstanding, the Department on Aging Beams, the budget amounts $250,000. The engineering's underway, and the bid process on that would start in the next couple of months. The jail generator, $160,000. Bids have been received and the contract awarded to Allen Earth and Sons at $101,877. But the delivery date's 44 weeks, so it won't be received until November 24. The license plate agency, the construction has already started. The construction signage and security cameras will be funded under the Skyland Services Center project. Mark Watson Paving, $400,000. We are doing some engineering to having them to do some core drillings, and the bid process on that should begin in early spring. There's one project that we have that we haven't done anything on, and just wanted you to be aware of it. It's Canada Volunteer Fire Department. We had received a request from them for repairs at the facility in Tuckasegee. And Chad Parker is working. This is a list of repairs that they have requested for the building. And he's going to go ahead and do the initial contact and get some estimates on it. And this is a project that could be considered during the budget process, or if it's something you want to move forward, we could do that.
When does Chad think he'll have estimates available?
He's going in the next week or so to look at the project. So it'll probably be
March.
March.
size of it, I don't remember.
Do you remember the square footage of it?
I don't remember square footage.
It's not too big. I don't think.
Yeah, it's a good size.
It's a good
you know,
size
it's
building.
great. Remind the public, does the county own that?
County owns the
Okay.
building.
Just wanted to make that, put
Yes.
that on the record.
It's got it's right there by the park, and it's their voting center.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Community center.
Yeah.
And the fire department's housed in the
Yeah.
bottom
in the
part
bottom
of it.
part of it. You go up 281, and it's I don't know, 5 miles or
Yeah.
so.
Probably.
Ms. Fox, on the Whittier Koala Park,
Mhm.
is there anything that we can do to speed up that process? I've had so many phone calls. I mean, and everybody's excited about it, you know, getting
Yeah.
started on it. But
We
you
will,
said that they're looking at connecting to the water down there.
Yes,
for
they are.
Twice, I guess.
yes. The main thing they were waiting on to finalize their plans was that well,
Okay.
and they completed that. So we'll get in touch with them and see if they can speed up.
All right. Thank you very much.
For the record, he's not the only one been contacted about it. Some of the same ones that's contacting him,
Yes.
contacting me, hey, Tom told me this.
Thank you for that
You're-
update.
Yep.
That's wonderful.
You're welcome.
Just knowing where we're at and where we're going.
That's true. Any other questions?
I don't think so. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Moving on now to our other business section, starting off that with our Fontana Regional Library Agreement and the Macon County request. And Mr. Cubis, our interim attorney, has been going through this new potential contract agreement and has some follow-up thoughts on how you know, we can work through this process with Macon County and Swain County and hopefully find us a nice happy median. So I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Cubis now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So appreciate this opportunity to bring to the board's attention and sort of revisit some of the considerations that we had with the proposed revisions and amendments to the Fontana Regional Library Interlocal Agreement. There's a fair amount of material to digest within this document. I think it can generally be broken down into three, what I perceive as three areas that the counties are looking to address and structure some revisions to the agreement. The first would fall generally within reforming some of the structure and governance within the agreement to sort of increase transparency. Secondly, we have some revisions and amendments that are to sort of change the means by which the FRL agreement makes decisions, how they enforce those decisions, and then finally within the third area, all of that amounts to what are some of the recourses available to the members of the agreement if they choose not to be a party to ultimately to the organization. So digging down a little deeper, one of the things that I want to bring to your attention, because I think this is something that most directly concerns this board and their sort of new obligations under these proposed amendments. I think we can all agree that increased transparency is a good thing. Certainly changes in governance can be a good thing as well. As drafted under the proposed amendments and how they exist right now, and I'm sort of looking generally under Section 3, which relates to the structure of the FRL and the Board of Trustees. And as drafted under the proposed amendments, it looks like it anticipates that the commissioners are going to be something more of the adjudicating body for compliance with the library's bylaws and enforcements of its policies and procedures. So that would likely mean that you all would not only be the deciding persons for the appropriateness of the trustees' compliance, which was, something that was in effect previously, but also whether the county libraries and their individual branches are acting in accordance with the intent of this agreement. And within that, sort of drawing attention to something that has been proposed to be an amendment within the agreement under Section 2 in the purpose statement is a phrase that I wanted to hone in on, and something that's been discussed previously. And you'll see in the red line under Section 2, it's this addition of language that the Fontana Regional Library shall operate the county libraries and branches of the participating local government units in a socially and politically neutral manner. So, there's been some discussion with the board and in public comment as to what this means. Certainly, whatever it does mean that the commissioners are now going to be in a position to determine whether or not the libraries are acting in accordance with the socially and politically neutral manner language. It seems reasonably likely that there's a question as to whether these matters are going to be brought before the board in quasi-judicial hearings, what it looks like to apply those higher standards of judicial procedure based upon this. And, frankly, what that term is ultimately going to be meaning and how it's going to be interpreted. And I think it's reasonable to foresee that there is going to be some question about how decisions under that are made. Another area that I want to bring to the board's attention is basically the pathway for what happens when an entity decides to leave. And I think this is certainly something that is going to be important for the board to consider certain impacts on. This is generally located under sections 7 and 8 of the agreement. And it really deals with, what happens to these assets that have been funneled into the FRL generally, and what do we do with them if a county decides to opt out of the agreement? As it's currently drafted, you certainly have a situation where it's anticipated that funds and resources that have been received and accrued through the overall agreement stay with those counties. If that is ultimately deemed to be the case, there's questions about as to whether or not that is there's a sense of fairness and the county's keeping those assets, and if it's ultimately determined that that is not the way that the folks want to go, and there needs to be a division of that. That is going to be a process that needs to be further considered and fleshed out, and saying, how do we distribute and divide these resources in an equitable way, and ultimately what impact does that have on the counties that are a part of this agreement? So, taking a 30,000-foot view at this agreement, certainly it seems that there is some good intent in here. There are some, structural and philosophical revisions to this that make sense. But as always, the devil's in the details, and I would put it to the board for consideration on, whether and to what extent there needs to be further conversation about how we want to enact these changes, and how and whether we're doing it in a way that makes sense to sort of carry out the intended purpose of the agreement as drafted. And so that's a lot I've thrown at you right now, I know, but I'm certainly open to any questions. But the main takeaways are, what we're looking at here generally is sort of a shift in sort of purpose, a shift in governance, and then a change in structure for withdrawal.
John, one question I had was if we should also be, at least with the chair of the trustees for the library, speaking with him regarding just including him in our conversation so that there's not a legal dispute where they're not involved in some way. Is that suggested?
You raise a very good point, Mr. Chair, and I think that is something that absolutely needs to be considered and likely needs to be pursued from a legality standpoint. The way that the agreement is drafted right now is, Fontana Regional Library, Inc. is a party to the agreement. They are a signatory to this document, and it's anticipated that they are, or at least the way it reads to me, that they are a deciding member in how this entity is going to continue to proceed under the guidelines that it was originally drafted under. So I would put it to the board that is something that should be considered.
Okay. I guess my next question is, when looking at dissolving, we're definitely going to have to look at, I hate to say it like this, but what items, we would need like an inventory of what every library has. And in the regional system, so many books come from other places. So it's really hard to determine what's ours, what isn't ours beyond, or what should remain in a library versus what was like called in for. Like I requested a book, and the closest library that had it was Raleigh in the Cardinal system, and it was sent in from Raleigh. It's now in the system, but it still may be another library book owned by the original entity. There's just so much within the inventory that scares me and doesn't in a 30-day cut and done, because we may have things over there and they may have things over here that get lost in that transition, or may not be returned in a timely manner for us to keep going. It's going to drag it on more than 30 days.
I'm not sure how you separate what's paid for by county donations
Right.
and other monetary donations or grants
Right.
that come to the library.
Even like
It probably goes into one pool of money.
right.
So
Friends of the library kind of funds, what
state grants. But
yeah. Because I know Highlands has their own library, and Casters has their own library. Silva has its own library. Franklin has its own library. So, as well as Swain. But they each have their own little group of people that contribute and want to make that one library better, or volunteer their time there. And not that those assets are always kept at that library. They may be moved to another one for whatever purposes.
I don't think the goal here is to split it up.
No.
I think it's to come to an agreement. I think we need some additional
Information.
visibility
Yeah.
and accountability from somebody that's elected or in a position that can do something about it. Because right now, the way the board is structured, it comes from the local library boards.
Right.
And they answer to nobody but themselves.
Right.
I think that's,
There's
anytime you're dealing with a public entity, the public needs to have somebody that's accountable for that. And right now, there is no accountability. That's the same thing I see here for the open meeting laws.
Right.
Because not all their meetings are open. We've seen that.
Yeah.
We've had people
Show up to speak and not get
and not be allowed to speak. That's not the way open meetings work, and that shouldn't be the way the public entities work, period.
Right. And then I look at, and this is just my opinion, and maybe some of the others, but just the phrase in a socially and politically neutral manner, even though the the wording is easy to read. It's very subjective. You know, you could move it however you wanted to, depending on what's on the board.
Well, I do know
So-
that Macon County, was revising that,
Okay.
and I'm not sure when they will vote on that or what the revised wording is, but I did hear that they were gonna clarify that.
I just feel like, you know, even though we know what we're trying to get across in terms of let's be nonpartisan, non-judgmental, whatever it is, it just leaves it open, especially if we're going to be the policing bodies
Yeah.
going in there. And we all know policing bodies can change up here every 2 years. So that's my fear and how we move forward with that.
I don't feel like we should be the first line of, hey, you know, somebody gets mad at the library for something, whatever it is. I don't think we should be the first line. They should go to the librarians, the library staff, then the FRL board, and then, you know, if,
So we need a chain of command,
Yes.
almost. We need to, in the contract, say first, you know, item is library staff and library director.
just like everything else in the county.
Right.
I mean, if somebody's got a problem with grounds or something, planning or whatever, they go to the planning director and then they bring it to the county manager. And eventually it comes to us if they get a resolution.
And I do think that is a fair point of consideration, and because, you know, at least to me, the way it reads right now is that you all would be the adjudicators. You know, you'd be deciding on some of these low-level policy and procedure compliance decisions. You know, I may be wrong in interpreting that, but that's what it looks like. So.
Well, I think I noted that in the first reading that we did here, that it seemed backwards, that the commissioners were top of the list and,
Then it went.
yeah, then it went down.
Yeah.
But the library system itself should be self-governing to a point, just like the planning department is self-governing unless there's a problem that needs to move forward through the chain, so.
I don't know how we go about doing this, but wouldn't it be smarter if we could have like a joint meeting or something with the counties? Because if we pass something here and then we send it back, it's just going to drag on and on and on.
Right. I think getting our feedback to Macon County is probably what we're going to want to do, especially if they're already working to change that in a socially and politically neutral manner. Language.
I think their meeting is today that they were gonna vote on that.
Okay.
Later, isn't it? Yeah, I think so. It's this week sometime. It may be yesterday, I don't know.
It may be where John needs to call Macon County's attorney
Yeah.
and have that internal conversation, and then we can.
I think we also need to go as far as contacting Swain because,
For sure.
I mean, if Jackson and Macon make the decision and Swain says no, we don't.
Yeah.
So we need to, I think instead of us working on something, and Macon working on something, we need to all get on the same page and have all of our concerns together and then get a contract together. That way all three boards
Could be.
can support.
Right.
Start.
Yeah. Yeah. 'Cause this is just taking up so much time. I mean, it's just going on and on and on. We should already come up with an agreement.
Has John, do you know if Swain County has even seen this?
I do not know. And so I think the point is well taken that, before we invest a lot of time and energy, I think we do need to have some sort of collaborative conversation, whether it's at the staff level, county attorney level, or what have you, even at the board level, to determine where everybody is on this.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Don had spoken with the county managers of Macon and Swain, so they came to a similar agreement but without restructuring. Anyway, Don presented that to us. I think that's what really kicked all this off,
Yeah.
spinning, and then so they know it's coming down the pipe, where they've actually seen this redlined agreement, I do not know. I haven't talked to any of them.
Call Kevin. And,
Maybe it's something where Darlene and all three of the managers and all three of the attorneys can sit down and say, okay, here's what we've got.
Who is Swain's attorney? Do we
I
know?
have no idea.
okay. I think that's where we're at. And I think that we've come to some resolutions, at least understanding where we're going with this and how we're trying to present it so that it's fair for everybody and makes it continues to make it a better product for everyone. So, I think the consensus is we need to get some other board input. Maybe Darlene, if you want to reach out to Macon's manager and Swain's county manager and see if we can.
Maybe RL, maybe they
Yeah.
need to be involved as well.
There are some parties that we need to
Okay.
include them.
And we need to set up a joint meeting, and I think the sooner we can do that, the better, instead of dragging this out for months. That's,
It may be that we need chairs, that way we can get the board voice for each, or I should say voice for each board, but just ideas of what each board is kind of thinking, our direction. Because I think us and Macon are on the same path, it's just the wording is off. I don't know about Swain, but it's just a matter of making sure that the library governing bodies are doing what they're supposed to be doing and.
getting there, the end result, that's.
Right.
We got different views.
Right. Okay. On my agenda again. Moving on now to our joint meeting with the Board of Education. So, looking at those dates, Thursdays are always better for me.
Is this gonna be evening or during the day?
6 o'clock.
Yeah, 6 o'clock.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I didn't see that.
Does anybody have an objection to Thursday, February 8th? Or joint meeting? Do you know if they've finished their master plan kind of?
They should have it finished and be ready to present it.
Okay.
And will this be at
Be at SEC, most
again?
likely.
Okay. February 8th. Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and put that on the agenda for next time. Put it in our calendars. I'll forget. Damn. More than likely.
I'll reach out to Dana and get the details for next week's meeting.
Is there any other business today? No. I'll seek a motion for adjournment. A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. We are adjourned.